Hello, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Jason Howell Company Speaker Series. My name is Jason Howell, and today, of course, we have a great guest, Mr. Kevin Martin, attorney at law, and he's got a specialty in both estate planning and privacy. So there are a lot of questions that I certainly have about controlling privacy and identity theft, and not only financial data, but physical data. And this is the guy who's going to help fill us in. But before we ask a bunch of questions, let's just meet Kevin. Kevin, welcome to the Zoominar. How has your day been so far?
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here, and I've had a great day. We've had a long winter, so any day that it's not snowing so far is a great day.
Agreed. Agreed. And you've been pretty busy today, or has it been a relatively easy day?
It has been non-stop. I had a client that got days mixed up, so we had to quickly shift to assist with that, and just a lot going on today. It's just been a particularly busy week, and so I was gonna say it's been a long week, but it's only Tuesday, so.
Right, exactly. Well, I'm really glad that you were able to carve out some time for us. And
Absolutely.
a kind of a topical topic. Just today, there was a reward put out there for Savannah Guthrie's mother because of her physical kidnapping.
Yeah.
There's just so much that we don't always think of, and I think what you do for families is important. So let's get to the presentation. Let's let people see some of your expertise here. Once again, folks, if you came to a topic that's in and around identity protection against financial and physical risks, you came to the right video, the right Zoominar. Once again, Kevin, thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolutely.
Before we get to the questions, let's just get a word from our sponsor. And our sponsor, of course, is the Jason Howell Company. We are a family wealth management firm specializing in a number of areas that help families who are navigating the complex and sometimes weird world of wealth. We serve them through using family governance, sustainable investing, and proactive philanthropy, helping organize the so many things to walk through. We don't do this alone. We build a team of advisors around our families with people much like Mr. Kevin Martin. So you're getting a group of folks that can help take care and be stakeholders for your entire family when you work with the Jason Howell Company. We're based in Fairfax, Virginia, but we serve clients nationwide. For more about our firm, just go and visit jasonhowell.com. And with that, we'll get on to Kevin and his biography, which is an extensive biography, not just because there's a few words on this screen, but because he's done a number of things in his life. And if you take a moment to pause this video and read through here, I think you'll be amazed. But Kevin, you've got a 30-year history, according to what was written down here, of a career so
Yeah.
far. Give us an idea, beginning with the investment banking world, which is amorphous to a lot of people. How was that
Yeah.
experience for you?
Yeah, so I grew up in rural South Carolina and always wanted to work in investment banking. So I went to Chicago. I went to the University of Chicago for my MBA and then worked in fixed income derivatives. And so this was just about the time, a few years before the whole collateralized mortgage obligations and debt obligations was really taking off. And so extremely fast moving and fast paced and very lucrative for a while before it almost, caused serious problems with the banking system. And I really enjoyed it. But I just wanted to continue learning. So I went back and got my JD. I ended up buying a small company, growing it and selling it. And then decided to join the Foreign Service. And so that was a real kind of turn left sort of, and but I wanted to help people and see the world. And so I had the opportunity to do that for about a decade and worked in about 20 countries, lived in Liberia, Afghanistan, Thailand, and back in DC. So
Wow.
really did a lot of higher level economic development. So for example, worked with the Central Bank of Yemen on improving their governance and market operations in a conflict situation. So that was interesting, and just a lot of different projects I worked on. So it kept me busy and kept me intellectually stimulated for sure.
And did that background in investment banking prepare you somehow for some of that?
It did. I think having the analytical rigor that's required of that field is translates very, very well. Um, Working in it was the global investment banking division of the Bank of America. And I remember at the time when I was leaving, I said, I'll never work for this large of an organization with, 200,000 people. But then I
Wow.
went to work for the federal government. So that was
Yeah.
like bureaucracy on steroids. So, it was interesting, but navigating that from a political standpoint was interesting. I will say that obviously the private sector I think is a lot more fast-paced than public service. And there's some pros and cons with that, but I think that analytical training and ability to assess risk and also worked on some very interesting, complex financial instruments along with a credit guarantee program that helped me understand and be able to talk to various actors and stakeholders for some various issues in capital. We were raising private capital for public good, and so that was quite interesting.
Yeah, and you took that experience and you went ahead and got your JD, became a specialist in law, and as we were talking before, this ideal around privacy trusts probably made sense because of the kind of families that you were working with already and you identifying that need. And you're not the only attorney that could have focused in this area, but what drove you to look into that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that, some of the countries that I worked in, you know, had been stable and then became somewhat unstable, and there were bad actors in any country you work in, no matter around the world. And I think that, in the past, especially with the ability to access online information, has become ubiquitous. And I think also you started seeing some beginning really for me, a wake-up call was around 2020. I don't know if you remember Judge, I think it was Alias.
Yeah.
She was gunned down by an attorney that
Yes.
ruled the wrong way, and her son unfortunately opened the door. Daniel. Now, the only good thing that came out of that is I think 12 jurisdictions adopted a Daniel's Law so that they provide privacy protection for public officials, but not people like ourselves. And
Yeah.
so and then it started to accelerate. We saw the insurance executive, um, Brian Thompson, that was
Yes.
murdered in New York.
Yeah.
Then
United
the
Healthcare.
two Minnesota legislatures that were killed, and
Yes.
that um,
Nancy Pelosi's husband was it
Nancy
too?
Pelosi's husband, and that, the one in Minnesota, you had a list of 45 people he was going to go after. So, and I started really around the past year or so, really thinking through about how can I help clients protect themselves from privacy standpoint. And so did a lot of research into laws, for privacy trusts. I suggest and used Florida as the jurisdiction for the trust because it has stronger privacy protection than the U.S. Constitution. So
Wow.
it's very robust and allows you to shield your, starting with your real property assets, in I think an efficient manner.
Well, I'm glad that you are specializing in that area because when I think about the kind of clients that we're working with, that doesn't always come up, but more of us ought to be thinking about it, considering again how topical this is and unfortunately how common it's becoming. Let's go to this list of questions that we have here, and if other questions come up or other answers come up in your mind,
Yeah.
feel free to share them. But initially, I have here this very first question because you mentioned the public officials and how maybe it's a little less easy to find them, thankfully. How easy is it to find a person's financial data or physical location today when it comes to non public officials?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it's pretty alarming, at least in my opinion. I mean, the data collection industry, data brokers, there are over 5,000. The total addressable market is over $300 billion worldwide. About half of that is in the US. And, so you have a very vested interest in that industry, not to you know, expand Daniel's Law to outside of 12 jurisdictions and apply to private citizens. I think you have seen some strong movement in Europe, for example, with their privacy protection. And privacy is one of those things that a lot of people want, right? If you looked at
Yeah,
when Apple allowed people to opt out of being tracked, I think the number was something like 90+% of people would opt out for the tracking. And I think
incredible.
I'll just say I don't know anyone that is happy with being tracked, right? And so
Right. Nor do
yeah,
I.
you can go on for a very modest price and find out, or free, where people live. The data brokers, and I'm not a data expert, but they'll scrape at the first level as much data, they just kind of hoover it up. And so you can go online easily and find out, you can find out the people that own property. You can
Yeah.
find out whether they have a mortgage. I do think other financial data is a little bit more difficult, but I think that with enough digging, you can find more than I think the average person would be comfortable with people finding out. And, they can find out, and again, with means to swat you or dox you or things like that. And so it can really ruin people's lives. And so you just want to be as careful as possible.
And have you found with your clients that they came to you because of your specialty, or was this something that you brought to their attention and said, would you like this too?
That's a great question. A little bit of both. I mean, some clients, there is a clear need for privacy, robust privacy, multi-layer privacy based upon um, mainly the professions that they engage in. And so, what I like to do is a privacy audit. First meet and then determine if it's a good fit, and then really do a privacy audit and try to start to track and understand what exposure they have, and then come up with the solutions for them to really try to be as much give them as much privacy as they desire. And other clients, in the conversation with a general someone, a family reaches out. I don't always bring it up, but certainly in certain fields like the intelligence community or law enforcement or other professions that really value their privacy, and there could be, I would say it's like a low probability, high impact event if someone wants to find them easily and cause harm.
Yeah. Low probability, high impact. Something to think about when we're looking at the category of risk management. That's really the point of it, isn't it?
Right.
So, are there, and this is our second question on the screen, are there some obvious protective strategies for folks that they could use for not only their financial data, which we're typically getting more savvy because of the assistance of banks and wealth advisors, but also their physical location, their physical data?
Yeah, I mean, I think doing like digital hygiene, so looking at, Google yourself, I think going to, you can opt out of data trackers, so taking advantage of that. You can, I'll speak to DC because that's the one I know best. You can go into certain websites that the city provides and determine, whose name is a certain property in, and whether, and they also have a heart to heart with your significant other or spouse, or yourself as to what level am I comfortable with my data being known. Some people want as much privacy as possible. I've had clients that just in talking with them, I'll just give an example. This isn't a client, but like an accountant would come to me and say, I want as much privacy protection as possible. And so we can provide that. Although, I mean, it's a personal decision, and I'm certainly not one to question it. So I think, and then also not me, but any attorney, talking about privacy and really thinking through how do I do this because it is a process and it can be pretty straightforward. But as you want to add layers of privacy into one's life, then you need additional, a little bit more complicated structures, typically involving LLCs. I like to use Wyoming, for example, layered with trust to add additional protection.
And that's something I have heard. I have heard about the use of LLCs
Yep.
protecting your home address and the like. One of the things I've also heard, though, is, for example, if you go into some of the online systems that promise to erase your background and the like, you almost have to ensure that they have some kind of system of keeping up with it because
Yes.
they regenerate. Do you know a little bit about that?
I don't know a tremendous amount about that, but I do know that every couple of months, for example, I use a very strong one password. And so every couple of months I change all of my passwords on everything, business and personal.
Okay.
I think that, before that I kept the same password and used it for everything, and that's just not very smart to do.
Right.
But definitely keeping up with things is very, very important.
You do hear from the IT folks about changing passwords. Can you
And they
say,
make it so easy today.
right, right. Is there anything that folks should focus on when it comes to their physical location, considering the most recent stories we've been unfortunately privy to?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm a big advocate of the privacy trust. That's kind of when I went into it. I know it's somewhat self-serving to say that, but with the privacy trust, you set up a trustee that has very limited ability to do anything without your say so. But their name, for instance, my law firm's name is listed as the trustee. So if you look up the particular person's address and they have a privacy trust, my name will show up. So that will protect them from that. And with the LLC, that is definitely an option. Some jurisdictions have a transfer tax for LLCs, whereas a revocable trust, there's no transfer tax. For a while there, we had the Corporate Transparency Act, which exempted revocable trusts. So, that is dead for now, but who knows what's going to happen in the future. So something to consider as well.
And that goes to your specialty, which is our third question on the list. It sounds like those privacy trusts, perhaps helping folks navigate the LLCs, these are some of your tools of your trade. Are there other things that are specific, at least to your what you concentrate on versus other estate attorneys who probably could do it, but it's just not their focus?
Yeah, so in addition to the privacy, I think given my international background and my interest in just the world, and especially from an estate planning standpoint, to me, it's fascinating how different countries and societies interpret and deal with inheritance laws and intestate succession. I mean, to me, that's fascinating, right? You think it'd be the same because we're all humans, but some countries have very different approaches to what we have here in the U.S. I mean, some jurisdictions don't recognize trust, for example. So I enjoy the international aspect of that. There are also tax implications that come into play with that, and then working with counsel in other countries to make sure that estates are harmonized. And then, again, thinking through the privacy angle as well, because that's certainly of importance to some people with, assets in the U.S. that they might live overseas.
Yeah, helpful, very helpful.
Yeah.
And when you start speaking about global, obviously other countries and the like, what hovers over all of it is artificial intelligence. Whether there are laws passed in the United States or not, you still have potentially bad actors in other countries. So, how does AI play into a proper risk management strategy that you might have some control and service over, and maybe there are other partners to bring in?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I am certainly no expert in AI, and it seems to be changing all the time. I think it's, you know, the way I look at it to begin with is kind of a double-edged sword, right? It can be an absolute threat, a serious threat, because you could create, and I'm just hypothesizing, a AI agent to really, I want to learn everything about this person, right? And it's going to spend and have a lot of resources to do that. On the other hand, you can use that AI agent to help mask or help improve your privacy, right? One thing that concerns me is the use and proliferation of deep fakes. For instance, I have a lot of clients I talk with, like you, on Zoom, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And in the future, I mean, I hired a company to make a deep fake of myself because I was curious, what is it like?
Yeah.
And it was, after several iterations, quite
Pretty good.
accurate. And
Yeah.
so when I'm dealing with clients in the future, how am I going to know that I'm really talking to that client? And it sounds like science fiction, but it's here. And that really concerns me, and is something I don't have an answer for at this point, other than in-person meetings, which I still, at the end of the day, think humans are social creatures and we like to have human interaction with. And so I don't think that's going to go away, at least in my lifetime or our lifetime. I don't think, but who
No,
knows?
you speak to a good point. I wondered after the pandemic whether we would ever shake hands again or hug,
Yeah,
and we do.
yeah,
So perhaps you're right. If we could get past 100-year plague and get back to our cultural norms, then
yeah.
maybe we can survive the tech as well. Well, let's go to that final point, which is from your position of understanding. Where do you see risk management for both financial risk and location risk going over the next just handful of years? How do we do a better job for our clients, our family of clients, many of whom are in the crosshair of potential great danger?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I work extremely hard to make sure that my clients' data is as protected as possible through encryption and having secure portal as well. And I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah,
I
sure.
think also, and I offer this, and I really do believe in a team approach for the client with the financial advisor, probably a CPA and the attorney all working together for that client, and minimizing or making coordinating data sharing with that for that client. Um, and I still think, I'm hopeful that in the future we'll have more laws to help protect privacy, because I think it's a big problem. And again, it's a big problem, but there are a lot of financial interests to keep things the way they are, which, might be good for an industry, but I don't think it's good for the average citizen.
Could you, before we end, could you speak a little bit to how you place yourself within that team of advisors to serve a family? Because that's really important and critical. And I'd love to hear more. I'd love the people listening and watching to hear more of that.
Yeah, I mean, with the client's approval, I mean, and consent, talk with the financial advisor, because they're pieces of data that a client might share with their CPA or financial advisor that they just don't think to share, but it's critically important. And so, making sure that we're all on the same page, I think, is very important. I think having, co-hosting events to where everybody gets together and gets to know one another, I think, is important. I think checking in with that client is also very important, as well as the financial advisor. Again, when it comes to the client, they are front and center, I think, for yourself and myself as well. And just, you know, the documents that I help to create, that's a small part of it, I would say. It's more about really understanding and counseling the client from an estate planning standpoint, because we want to make sure that what we work with, or work with the client to create, works very, very well if the worst happens, right? And that takes a lot of conversation and a lot of understanding about that client.
No, it's terrific. I'm hearing co-hosting events, that's great. I certainly resonate with that idea, meeting the advisors, and the clients, fellow advisors, and the like. So we all know that we have real life humans in front of us, whether intermittently on Zoom or not. Secure portals, as you mentioned, of course, changing passwords.
Yeah.
As we close this conversation today, is there one takeaway that someone viewing this who may or may not be qualified to become a client of yours should look into themselves just to clean up a little bit of their own identity risk management?
Yeah, I would start with, doing a search for yourself and see what is out there. And
Search on Google. You mentioned
yeah, and then if you want to hire a data broker to see what they can find on you, I think is a good first start. And you can also, there are a lot of services out there that you can maybe, if it's not super expensive, or if it is, depending on how much you want to spend, really can do a very cursory level down to very, very deep dive to see what risk you have. And again, I go back to some professions are, I think, have a much greater probability that something could happen, and you just want to be prepared and try to mitigate your data out there, especially where you live. Yeah.
Kevin Martin, attorney at law, based in D.C., licensed in a few other states, especially Florida, which is where the top security goes for privacy. Thank you so much for being with us. Is your website
Law.com, yes.
KevinMartinLaw.com.
No, and thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and talk about privacy. It's really important and important to me as well. So thank you.
Awesome.